There's lots of people uploading their mid-year freakouts. Now, I'm not freaking out about Booktube, but I think it's time I took stock of where I come to at the halfway point of the year. So I need an audit. If only there were somewhere I could get one.
Hello, my name is Gavin, and this is Genre Books, and this is a bit of a weird video to do, but this, I think I'm going to call it my half-year audit. I haven't been on Booktube half a year, but we're halfway through the year. So I've been on Booktube since the 4th of February, so coming up to 5 months. I think I want to use this as an opportunity to talk to myself, if no one else, and think through what's working, what isn't working, what I've enjoyed, what I need to change, and I think how it's impacting my reading as well. So if I take those reading numbers so far this year, 73 novels and short story collections, and between 70 and 80 individual short stories. I think that's a reasonable amount. I think if I hadn't spent my weekends recording and editing videos, I would have read a lot more, but I would have read less widely. I would not be involved as much and taking on suggestions and taking inspiration from other posters and getting involved in the events. And I think that the events that I've been participating in and becoming more involved in have been good for my reading. It's a difficult argument to make for the Wasted Weekend. That's like August 2.5, I think that was. It's great fun, don't get me wrong, but trying to think what I did read. It was The Waters of Death by Irving Greenfield, which was terrible, but also the Bermuda Triangle book by Charles Berlitz, which a book that has its issues, but a great nostalgia piece for thinking of the 1970s and seeing that book on the shelves of so many of your friends' parents' living rooms. March didn't get involved in any events too much, but for April there were two. There was Giant April from Roy Reads Anything, which I really enjoyed and still have it here, and I got a badge from, which is fantastic. And that did lead me to read some books I absolutely otherwise would not have done. I don't think I would have got round to the novelisation of King Kong. I don't know whether I would have read the first two Godzilla novels. I certainly don't think I would have read Gigantic by Ashley Howes, which was a great book. So I thank Roy Reads Anything, Obscure Book Adventures and Back Away from the Donkey for creating and hosting that event. Simultaneously, something that was running in both April and May is Spring Into Adventure. And I think both Giant April and Spring Into Adventure combined led me to read The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle. So, brilliant. Spring Into Adventure also led me to read an adventure pulp. In this case, it was an issue of Magic Carpet, which was from the same publishing house as Weird Tales. I think a magazine that, had it not been for this event, would have been very much down the bottom of the list of pulps that I would otherwise have read. It was one that was picked at random, but I do find with these with these pulp magazines, there's always something in there which will surprise you, and there was a few in Magic Carpet, but possibly the biggest surprise was finding that it was the first appearance of Red Sonja from Robert E. Howard, and a character that is very different from the Red Sonja that we see in the movies. The deep dives on the pulps have been hit and miss, or possibly small miss and big miss. The most views for any of my videos is only a shade over 500, but that is for the first deep dive into Planet Stories. The least amount of views I have for a video is a very recent one about a sports pulp, which I think at the moment is maybe 15 views. But then this is the question of, what am I doing this for? It's nice to get views, it's nice to get subscribers, but I enjoy going down my own rabbit holes. I enjoy ploughing my own furrow and occasionally turning up something worthwhile. Also in May, the second half of Spring Into Adventure, there came, of course, Horror Mayhem, and that led me into something I'm deeply uncomfortable with, which is filming in public. Fortunately, I didn't have to do any talking, but we took a short visit to Rye in East Sussex and had a look around Lamb House, which was owned by 3 writers during its existence: Henry James, E.F. Benson and Rue McGodden. And whilst annoyingly Henry James didn't write The Turn of the Screw whilst he was living there, which would have been Horror Mayhem gold, he actually wrote it whilst he owned the house but was living in a flat in London. It's quite inconsiderate. It did allow me to be introduced to a writer I knew the name of but had not read any of, and that is E.F. Benson. Now, he's quite famous for sort of novels about upper class English society. His first novel, Dodo, was a minor sensation scandal in late Victorian London, and he's probably most famous for his Map and Lucia novels. But it was his ghost stories, obviously being Horror Mayhem, that I was concerned with, and his ghost stories that I ended up reading. I also ended up reading a biography putatively of E.F. Benson, but also his entire family, which was a total eye-opener. So another event which is definitely enriching for me. Last year I took part in June on the Range for the first time, and I think probably the first westerns I'd ever read, and I found one of my new favourite genres. I knew I was going to be taking part in that event last year because I ended up buying some westerns in April with a view to saving them from June, and during the last year up until this June I've been getting the occasional western book in anticipation of the event. This is simultaneously brilliant but also something I'm wondering whether I am limiting myself. I don't want to just read westerns during 1 month of the year. I don't want to read mysteries just in 1 month of the year. I may have to temper my enthusiasm for the book events. I still want to take part, but possibly not to the exclusion of almost everything else that month. I think I possibly need to be a little more discerning about what I choose, stick to it, and continue to read more widely. So there you go, this video has been useful. I've come to that realisation. Not that I have been completely monomaniacal when it comes to the reading for the events. There have been other things I have been doing alongside, although in a limited and specific number of ways. There are the Planet Stories deep dives. I'm going to continue doing these. I have one planned for July. I will still have 67 issues to do after that video. So this is a long-term project. I pretty much always knew it would be. Alongside some of the events, I have enjoyed going through, trawling through Project Gutenberg and selecting, or sometimes trying to desperately cobble together 50 titles to do with a particular genre, the genre of that event. So I've done horror, sport, westerns, science fiction. I'm sure there are some more things I can tease out of Project Gutenberg before the end of the year. There are the birthday shorts I've been doing. They're pretty much low effort, throwaway jobs. I find out which authors have been born that day and give a very, very brief biography or bibliography. But that has exposed me to some new writers as well. It has piqued my interest in wanting to know more about such writers as Alice Askew. Now, I think this is because, having never heard of the woman before, I picked up on her name twice in 1 week. Once when I was going through Sports Gutenberg picks. She co-wrote with her husband and they wrote a book on horse racing. And then her birthday came up in the same week. And then I found out that she and her husband had been killed by a German submarine. How did I not know about this writer or this story? It's one I want to have a look at properly at some point. I've also been doing a deep dive into the Lawrence van der Post books that I have. And although I have failed during June to read the one I was wanting to, I've got time to catch up during August, September. His books have been a bit of a revelation to me, and I think once I've read the ones I have in my collection, I'll be doing at least a video on his works. And lastly, possibly the most unobtrusive thread I've had running through the 4 and a bit months has been the tote bag of mild peril, where I choose at random a book from the shelves. That's led me to read some books I otherwise would not have got round to. The Princess Bride, V. Books I know that I want to read. I must have wanted to read them. I bought them. But I think the hand would always have passed over them on the bookshelf. So it's been, I think, a net positive for me, even if I possibly haven't used it as much as I would have envisaged doing so. But something as random as picking names out of a bag shows where things can lead you as a reader. Even something which I think is sort of inconsequential as choosing the name of the channel, genre books. This meant I thought, you know what, I'll actually write down some genres and I'll put genres in that bag as well, and some sort of quite obscure genres, which unfortunately I've only picked one of these out so far, and that has been misery literature. But then that led me to read the Maria Monk book, a story I had not heard of, and one that I ended up reading the book and yammering on about it for 20 minutes or so. I think almost every personal highlight for me of the videos that I've made so far has been in every occasion where it's been something that is new to me. So I had never read any Edward Bulwer-Lytton before, and I read The Coming Race, and that was one of the most enjoyable rabbit holes to fall down. It was a crazy story. It's an okay book, but the whole reaction to it and the continuing impact it has really surprised me, and it's also set me to thinking about some reading I want to do in upcoming years. The E.F. Benson, I really enjoyed the stories. I found out that I really enjoy literary biography, which I've not read much of before, I'll be completely honest. With westerns, reading and comparing The Virginian by Owen Wister and The Administratrix by Emma Gent Curtis. I did not think at the beginning of the year that I would be reading two books that people think of as the first westerns or the first cowboy stories. I certainly would not have guessed that the first cowboy story would be something written from the viewpoint of women's suffrage. But there you go. And it makes me very excited for what's still to come this year. Rocket Summer begins, if I time the release of these videos correctly, tomorrow. And this will be not only the ideal Booktube event for me, it's classic science fiction, which is probably the favourite thing that I read, but I've also been asked to co-host an event which is going to be completely new for me. Garb August is coming up, and I'm already thinking about the books that I'm going to be reading in Garb August. Why am I thinking about trash books? This is no great work of curation. I'm picking some schlocky titles off my shelves. There is an event about art somewhere in the remainder of the year, and I want to find out more about that and get a little bit involved, because I've got some art books. I don't talk about them on here, and maybe it'd be a nice thing to do. Shakestember is coming up. Now, I've read a lot of Shakespeare, but I've not read all of Shakespeare, so I'm not intending to read all of Shakespeare in a month. I'll be absolutely clear on that from the get-go. But I do need to fill those gaps in. Something which I didn't get to take part in last year, but I've since got the first volume of the complete Conan, so I'll dip my toe into Cimmeria in September. I've got some ideas for Victober. Whether all of these will come to fruition, I don't know. Some of them are even going to be a little weather dependent, but we shall see. November and December I've not really given much thought to yet, but Christmas is a time for ghost stories, so I might be dipping back into maybe a little more E.F. Benson, maybe some Algernon Blackwood. I also want to do something that allows me to look through some old horror and gothic fiction, and I think possibly a good hook to that would be reading the horrid novels as cited in Northanger Abbey. And also in December, one thing I do want to do is any books that I have not finished during the year, and there have been some that I'm reading slowly along, I get the chance to complete. So possibly not making too many plans for the end of the year. It's a busy time of the year anyway, but maybe taking that more sedate approach to Booktube events might be a good thing to do in the following years, because I want to be in this for the long haul. I don't want to burn myself out trying to do everything all at once, which is my natural inclination. But the best thing, the highlights of the year, is the community and the interaction. Not only the people that I started around the same time as, who I talk to varying degrees. Pat, Reading Ideas, Monty Atkins, but also ending up conversing with people whose you've only been watching their channels for a year or more. So ending up conversing with Roy or Sean, that's a highlight for me, because I appreciate what they do and I like to be able to show that appreciation. And it's the one thing I've got to work on, is definitely, I'm not the most gregarious, outward going of people. Booktube is helping, but I need to put in the effort as well. And I think what I get most, not say nervous, but and not uncomfortable, but I don't wish to appear presumptuous when there are new booktubers and I say, welcome to Booktube. And I say, what do you mean welcome to Booktube? You've only been here 4 months yourself. But I should maybe start doing that and reaching out and saying hello to people a lot more than I already do. So yes, hopefully some changes that I can engender, and one more change that I hope comes from an external source. I really want to get back into the swing that I had at the end of last year of visiting the British Library once or twice a week. Now, as I've said before on the channel, they had a massive sort of hacking attack. They had to take all their systems either offline, all the systems were taken offline for them. I've not been able to reserve books electronically, which, given I only have 2.5 hours in an evening once or twice a week to spend at the library, means I can't spend 90 minutes of that time waiting for them to retrieve a book on the day that I get there. Soon as that search and reserving function is back up and running, I am back in there. I am reading lots and lots about the Hanseatic League. So as long as they get their systems up and running again, expect to hear a bit more about the Hanseatic League next year, because I can bore on about that subject like nobody's business. Also, must find a way to stop my throat getting so croaky when I do these videos. If anyone has, any opera singers out there have any tips or tricks, please do let me know. Anyway, enough waffling on. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for continuing to indulge me on these silly little videos. And I'll see you soon.